What's up guys? Hey, it's me, Sean Astrom. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how we can use the Corona standard material and now apply it to a hair object to create some really nifty looking grass. Let's have a look at that. Okay guys, so I'm going to hop on over here and grab myself a nice plain object. And then let's scale this down to something like 200 by 200 and let's put some segments in here. If I hit NB, that's the same as going over here and enabling Gerard shading. That way we can see our geometry a little bit better. And this is going to be the object that I add my grass slash hair onto. So yeah, let's do that. So with the plane selected, I'm going to just go up here to simulate hair objects, add hair. And just like that, we'll get some nice guides. And if I select the hair object here, I can go to the Guides tab, and I'm going to set the length to something like 15. So this is looking pretty cool. So for my lighting, what I'm actually going to do is create a new light material. We're going to call this CG HDRI, and I'm going to load up one of my new HDRI skies I've been working on. So over here in the content browser, I have these guys loaded up. This is the Perfect Clouds set. If I go in here, I want to bring in this Perfect Clouds 5. Now with these new skies, I have a 2K version and the regular 14K. So this is nice and speedy. What I'm going to do is just drag over the 2K right in here, the texture slot, and we'll just pop that in there. We don't need to copy it into the, the project folder. So now I'm going to do is go up here, grab a sky here, and we'll just plop that guy onto there. I'm going to go to the preview tab here of the material and increase the viewport size resolution a little bit so we can see what we're getting. So we got these nice, beautiful clouds in there now. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my Corona Nodes tab here because I'm going to be using these guys in a second. I'm going to do a save, and let's fire up the interactive renderer here, and I'm going to drag this guy down here. And just like that, guys, you guys can see, hopefully, that we have some nice looking hair here, and that's all looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and this new feature in the latest beta, we can now add any old material to the hair. So I'm going to create a new material. We will call this grass. And I'm going to plop this guy onto my hair object. So now if I go under the diffuse channel, for example, and find a nice green color here, and we fire up the interactive renderer here, you can see that that is working. And that is just great. So what I'm going to do though, guys, we're going to make a pretty sweet little grass material. So let's drag this guy over to our Corona Nodes window, and if you guys want to access that, you can go up here to the Corona menu, Node Material Editor, and here's the little shortcut right here, so you can click that as well, and you see that highlighted my window here. So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to bring in a variation shader, and I'll do that here. So remember guys, Corona supports all of Cinema 4D's, or at least most of their native shaders. So this is the variation shader that's part of Cinema 4D. And if I plug this guy right into the diffuse channel here, I'm going to bring up my interactive renderer again, and we'll drag it up here so we can see both the nodes and this. So that's looking good. Seems to be working, and I'm going to select the variation shader, and we're going to go into here, and under object variation we want to set this to, well, I think we want to leave that to objects. Under polygon variation we want to set this to polygons, and what this will do is I'm going to refresh this here, so we should start to see some variation on the actual polygons, which is cool, of the actual hair geometry. So I'm going to stop this. I'm going to go into our hair object, and under the hairs tab, well actually sorry, under the generate tab, a lot of tabs here with the hair, I'm going to grab, we're going to set the type to flat. Now this is actually going to generate geometry in our viewport. And to get rid of that, I believe if we go into the hairs tab, where is it here? Editor, here we go, generate. We want to uncheck this as render. And I believe that as render, so we want to do none here as well. So that will hide that stuff from the viewport, and that just keeps our viewport running a little bit quicker, which is good. And if I go back to the hairs tab here, I want to show you guys that the segments for these hairs are set to 12, and that's kind of an important value, because if we go back to the variation shader, I want to set this polygon step to 12 as well. So now for every 12 polygons, it's going to do a variation in the color of that geometry. So I'm going to fire up the IPR again here, and now if you can see, each hair strand, see if this guy will wake up here. Each hair strand has a different color, and that's what we want, because we're trying to make grass, and it will really look nice if the grass has some variation to it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. So next I'm going to go in here to the color variation tab, and let's just drag this over so we have a little more room. And for the texture, I'm actually just going to bring in a color here, a color shader. Let's just pick a nice green here again, and you'll see kind of in the preview what we're getting here. And then what I'm going to do is actually, for the gradient here, I'm going to just bring in some more colors, and let's just go through and pick some kind of variations of colors here. So we'll go a little yellowy brown, a little more yellowy yellow, and this is just whatever you guys feel like doing. Doesn't have to be anything too perfect. So oops, this is going to give us some nice variation here. And if I set, let's see here, let's set this to multiply. So now it's going to multiply these colors with our base color here. And we can see that in our little preview here. So I'm going to save. Let's fire up the interactive render here. And just like that, guys, you can see that we have some nice variation going on with our grass here. So I'm going to bring in a Corona camera. Let's crank up the exposure by half stop here. Fire this up again. See what we get here. So that's looking pretty good. So what's so great, guys, is now since we're using a standard Corona shader, what I can do is I can enable translucency. And with translucency, we're going to get this nice, well, translucent effect going on our grass. And what I want to do is bring in a filter shader. We're going to plug the variation shader in here, and I'm going to pop this guy into the translucency texture. So I want to just make sure I'm doing the right one here. So we want to go into the second one here, this guy here. And then the fraction value, if we leave this to around 50 or 40 should be fine. Go ahead and start up the IPR here. And let me bring this down here. Spin the camera around. We should be seeing some nice translucency, and I'm going to actually crank this up a little bit. The fraction value, and I want to go into the filter and actually desaturate it a little. And hopefully you can kind of see what's going on there. And I might crank up the lightness a bit, and yeah, that's cool. So one of the things we can do now is go to the hair material here, and we can go under the settings here, and we can actually enable something like frizz. Should give us some nice random bending around of the grass, which is great, which looks good. And something else I want to do, guys, is if I go into the hair object, I want to make sure, let's see, guides, the hair system, there's a lot of menus in here, so sometimes it's tricky to find stuff, but if we go under guides here, where is it? Have to bear with me here. I'm trying to find the setting where we can change the direction here of where the hairs are going. So, guidelines, display, generator, alignment, random. There we go. So, yeah, it's under the generate tab and alignment, random. So if we fire this back up again, guys, now we're getting, this looks a little better. The hairs are now, randomly spun around. So that looks much, much better. And if I zoom in here, we can get a nice close look. You kind of see we got that nice translucent effect going on, which looks awesome. Now, another cool thing we can do is these hairs have kind of built-in UV coordinates, so we could bring in a gradient ramp here. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the interactive renderer here. And I want to create like sort of a dark line that goes through the center of the grass to kind of represent the spine, or I don't know what it's technically called, but if you look at a strand of grass, you'll know definitely what I'm talking about here. So what we can do for this guy is let's actually bring in a layer, and again, this is Cinema's built-in layer shader here. And let's see here. Let's take this, let's take the variation, pop this guy in here as our first layer. And then we want to bring in this as our seconds. And if we just go here, we can set this to multiply, lower the opacity a little bit. And now remember, we can always pop this into here. And remember, guys, these nodes are awesome. Like, this is what they've done with the node system is really cool, because it's really just an extension of the layer-based shading system that's already in Cinema that you're probably already familiar with. So again, I can't emphasize enough, these are all of the built-in Cinema 4D shaders, which is cool. I don't think any other render engine is utilizing them in this way. So let's go ahead and fire up the IPR, see what we get here. And just like that, guys, you can see that we have that nice gradient kind of going up through the center of the grass, which is pretty much exactly what we want. And that's looking pretty cool. So this is sort of our grass shader that we've made. What I want to do next is bring in a landscape object. I'm going to just hide this starter plane we created, and let's uncheck borders at sea level, and let's uncheck multifractal, and let's lower the fine furrows down to like 0. So this will give us more of like a hilly type situation. I'm going to scale this up to a larger size, maybe increase the Y direction a little bit. And I'm just trying to get some nice kind of rolling hills. Now, what's so cool about the hair system, guys, is I can just go to here, go to the Guides tab, and just replace the object here. And let's fire up the interactive renderer, and voila. So we don't have enough hairs, and we can just go to the Hairs tab and increase the count. I'm just going to pop a 0 in here and see where this gets us. And I hope you can notice and see how quick the hair system is working with Corona. It's very quick to render all this. And if I go back to the hair, let's crank this up to 250,000. Let's see what this gets us. Fire this bad boy up here. Dun, dun, dun. Now this is going to take a little longer. Obviously, because it has to calculate all those extra hairs we just added. Let's see here. It's thinking, it's thinking. Now, right now, if I go into the render settings, you'll see that I have, wow, I don't even have it switched to Corona. That's funny. So if I set it to here, I do have the fast preview denoise turned on, which is kind of the default now, which is pretty cool. It's amazing. It basically is NVIDIA's optics denoiser is running to kind of clean up images as they're rendering, and it works amazing. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to just create a quick dirt shader. So we'll just bring this guy in here and call it dirt. Now we're going to create a new view. Now this is a pretty cool, interesting way that Corona handles this, but if we want this to be our grass view, all we need to go in here is just rename this to grass. And so now you see this little tab up here, we have grass here. So if I go view, create view, and I'm going to call this dirt. And now we can bring this dirt over here. So now we have two separate node systems for each material. And this works really well when you want to do, like, let's say you have like 5 wood materials. You can keep them all in one shader view, or node view rather. And it's really actually a really cool way to keep your materials organized and whatnot. So we'll do this real quick. I'm just going to bring in a noise. We'll do a Luca, definitely one of my favorites. And we'll just change the colors here in the noise. Just find a nice dirt tones here. Good enough. Bring that into the diffuse. And then I may take this guy and plug it into displacement. And I probably should change the colors with like a colorizer node, but for this case, this actually seems to be working pretty good. I'm going to lower the saturation on that and bring this guy down. Okay, good enough. So we have some dirt here. So let's plop that onto our landscape. Now instead of firing up the interactive renderer, I'm just going to render to picture viewer here and see what we get here. Now remember, so we're doing 250,000 hairs here, so it's going to take a second. Sorry guys, just drinking the old tea here. Man, so just like that, guys, this is looking pretty cool. Yeah, that's looking great. So I'm going to go in my render settings. I'm actually going to lower this a hair to half HD. And the only other thing I might do, guys, is let's bring in a forest or tree. Go to my top view here. Let's just bring this guy over here. Little tree just sitting on the hill. And I'm going to actually scale this here, which isn't the correct way to do it, but if you guys haven't checked out the Forester plugin for Cinema, I would highly recommend having a look at it. It's pretty cool. And we'll actually, let's load up an apple tree. And we'll, again, scale this down. And by scaling it down this way, it's keeping the leaves pretty big. So we're kind of creating like this cartoony tree, which is kind of cool looking. And let's just kind of find a cool camera angle here. And let's take my camera and just pitch it up a little bit. Cool. Now, another cool Corona thing is I can just select these guys. Well, I'm going to convert these to Corona materials using this scene converter, but it's actually going to convert the hair material, which I want to keep. So I'm going to edit this, go edit, copy, and you'll see here if I go up here and do my scene conversion, see it converts that hair, which is not really what we want. Hopefully they can change that, but then I can go paste, bring back that hair object, and we'll just plop it back on to where it was, and we'll get rid of this guy. But just like that, we've converted the Forester materials here, and I'm going to enable translucency for this guy and just put a generic green color in there. And let's see here, turn off garage shading. And last thing, well, a couple more things. Let's go to my content browser. Let's swap out with the high resolution 14K Perfect Clouds 5. Yeah, and if you guys haven't checked these out yet. I just released like a ton of new HDRI skies. So if you check out Perfect Clouds, these are all of them here. And I did a bunch of different renderings kind of showcasing all these clouds. I think this might be Perfect Clouds 5 that we're having a look at here, but definitely check these guys out if you haven't already. Okay, so we updated that to the 14K version, and let me go to my hair and let's crank up the guy. Well, no, sorry, the hairs. Let's go 60. Let's go, yeah, 600,000 hairs. Let's see what we get here. And I'll just bump this back up to 720p. Let's let this render here. And yeah, guys, I mainly just wanted to show you in this tutorial, hair now supports the standard Corona material, which is great for things like grass and other effects we may want to do. And also that variation shader, I might do a whole tutorial just on the variation shader because it's super powerful. You know, it works on tree leaves, you know, rocks. There's all sorts of cool things we can use that variation shader for. So now remember, guys, we got displacement going on the ground. We got 600,000 hairs. We got translucent grass here. Dang, guys, look at that. I didn't even plan on these guys kind of being in the foreground. Now, if I put in some depth of field, that would actually probably look really cool. But for the time being, I'm just going to leave this like this. We'll let it clean up a little more. The thing about Corona, and I don't know how, I mean, it must be the GI solution, but I mean, this image is already clean. Like, this is done. So it took a minute to load everything up, you know, all those hairs and everything else, but, you know, 1 minute, and we got a clean render here. Now I'm just going to bring up my good old post effects. Let's drag this guy over here. And let's maybe throw in a LUT. And if I do the filmic highlights, should kind of bring back a little more detail in my clouds. And actually, let's put the exposure back down. That looks pretty good. Blooming glare. Let's see what we get here. Crank up the intensity. The threshold can always usually be lowered a little bit. That's looking pretty sweet. So yeah, guys, you know, this is just another fun little quick example of the power of Corona and Cinema 4D. It's awesome. I love the fact that he uses all of C4D's native shaders. Especially if you're new to Cinema 4D and you want to start dabbling with a third-party render engine, Corona should definitely be your first choice. Not to mention, it just looks amazing. So anyway, thanks guys for watching, and there should be some more of these very soon.